Update: my 29 male, girlfriend 30 female says I need to get rid of my dead wife's stuff or she's leaving. Original post: I first got married at the age of 18 to my girlfriend I had been with since the age of 15. We enjoyed 6 years of marriage together before she died in a motorcycle accident, leaving me broken and severely depressed for years. A bit over a year ago, 4 years after my wife's passing, I met my current girlfriend at a work event, and we really hit it off. I decided that it was time for me to start looking for a serious partner again and that my wife would have wanted me to be happy. My current girlfriend and I became more serious over time and we moved in together 2 weeks ago. I've spoken with her extensively about my deceased wife and the mental health issues it brought to me, and she has been nothing but supportive and loving. The problems began after we moved in together. I have a small chest that I used to keep under my bed that has a few things that belong to my deceased wife along with some photos of the two of us. During the moving process, my girlfriend noticed the chest and asked about it, so I explained what it was and showed her the contents. I didn't really expect it to be a big deal, but since I showed her, things have never been worse for us. She sat me down that night and explained that because I still had the chest and wanted to keep it, it was an indication to her that I hadn't moved on from my deceased wife, and that she doesn't think that she can continue the relationship unless I get rid of it. I was pretty shocked at this and told her that I needed some time to think about it. Well, it's been 2 weeks now and I still don't know what to do. My current girlfriend and I have had no major problems up until this point, and she's asking me daily when I plan to get rid of it, and says that she can't live in the same space as the chest. I really don't want to get rid of it, but I want to continue my relationship with her as well. What can I say to her to get her to understand? Or am I just being crazy by keeping those things for years? Edit: typo in the title. Should say 30 female. Now for some comments before reading the update. Not everyone can date someone whose partner had passed away. They have to understand or at least navigate it so that they realize they are not in competition with the one who has passed. It's not an easy thing, and not everyone is capable of handling it. There should be respect for the person and the relationship that came before them. Pictures and mementos are memories that don't need to be erased. Now, if they are all over the house and there was no space or little space for her, that would be a different story. Of course, there are times when the partner of the deceased does not make room in their life for someone new. But that doesn't sound like that's the case here at all. Yeah, until she has someone she loves passes, she isn't going to fully understand that there is no getting over it and moving on. Grief does not work that way. It's not a competition, it's just loss and trying to move forward in life, carrying that around. I've never lost a spouse or a partner, but I've read somewhere that something that really helped deal with the fact that I wasn't getting over the death of a loved one. Grief is like trying to fit a basketball in a shoebox, but over time the ball gets smaller and the box gets bigger. You reach a point where you're able to close that box, but the ball is still and will always be there, and you'll still hear and feel it when you move the box. The only answer: the girlfriend is jealous of a woman who is literally no longer of this mortal realm, and they've only been dating for a year-ish. Maybe I'm biased because I had my first love when I was young too, and my husband would never make me toss any of the photos, trinkets, or whatever I had left because he is sane. OP, your wife was an important part of you who was robbed from this world too soon. It's not like you're littering the house with it. It's just a little memorial chest you keep safe and sound. It's honestly very sweet. Another example I can give you: I have a good friend who had the same thing happen. His first love died of cancer. It was awful. You know what his girlfriend, now wife, did? Bought him a little glass display shelf to put her pictures, her rosary, they're religious, and other trinkets he still had of her, and organized it into a beautiful display. She knows that his love for her is never going to go away. It was his wife, and she died of cancer. She also knows that she is the number one person in his heart right now, and having his memorial around for the past wife isn't going to change that. I'm not the type to display my things. I only have one stuffy out from my past boyfriend, but I'll be damned if my husband didn't bring me to hang it with my others, and there's a little stuffy display net. Ha ha. He also still comforts me when I get sad here and there about it. And here's the thing. I love my husband way, way more than I ever loved my first boyfriend, but I will always still love him, you know? He died. That's just how it happens when people you love die. And real partners know that and don't get weird about it. I am shocked she asked you to do this. Please keep your chest safe and reconsider moving her in. Good luck. Now for the update. Update. Wow, I did not expect the amount of feedback at all on the post. Sorry I haven't responded to many comments. It was a bit overwhelming to wake up to thousands of them. But I wanted to provide some more information and an update about how everything went down. Some people were wondering how often I look at the chest and talk about my late wife. I spend prolonged time with the chest and its contents usually twice a year, on her anniversary date and her death date. So I'm not constantly opening it and having it out and around and stuff. I feel as though I find the most comfort just knowing that it's nearby, strangely enough, which is why I wanted to keep it in the house. Most of the conversations about my previous marriage have been prompted by my girlfriend, not me. I can talk about it pretty openly when asked about my late wife, but I seldom bring her up on my own in conversations. She used to be all I ever talked about, and it was annoying and uncomfortable to people in my life. Looking back on a lot of our conversations, my girlfriend would frequently ask questions trying to gauge if I was still mourning or if I was happy again. Now with the chest incident, that makes sense to me that it has been an unvoiced insecurity for a while. At the time, I suppose I just thought that she was asking if I was depressed still, but I see now that she was just asking if I was truly over my late wife. When my girlfriend asked me to get rid of the chest, she did in fact mean dispose of it. I didn't go into great detail about the conversation we had when she sat me down, but I proposed keeping it more tucked away, not in our bedroom or at another person's home, and she continued to say I was still hanging on and not ready for a relationship in her eyes, and keeping it somewhere else didn't change that. I am definitely not getting rid of the chest, and by that I mean disposing of it. It's been locked in my car the past couple of days while I've been dealing with this. I got some really good advice from you guys and tried to have an open, honest conversation with her today, asking her why the chest was so significant as to give me an ultimatum, and why she felt like I had to get rid of it to continue growing our relationship. She said the entire relationship we've had, she always felt like she had to match up to the standards of my late wife or be even better so that I would stay with her, and that me still having the chest was the confirmation that she will always be lesser than. If I got rid of the chest, it would be confirmation that I was ready to give my whole heart to her. This broke my heart, honestly, and I couldn't believe she never told me she was feeling this way and that I didn't see it. It also made me feel confused because I've been trying to show her the best I can that I can give her my heart in other ways. Why do I need to dump these precious memories to do that? I told her that the relationship with my late wife and my relationship with her are entirely independent of one another, and that I was focused on building trust and love with her, not trying to replace my late wife or compare her by any means. I told her that I couldn't dispose of the chest because it meant a lot to me sentimentally, but that I wasn't keeping it to hang on or cling to my late wife. I just felt as though it was an important part of my history, and I wanted to honor her memory. Some of the trinkets in the chest were from when we were 16 years old, going to high school, dances, learning how to drive together. I couldn't simply trash those. I reassured her that I loved her for exactly who she was, not the position she held in my life or how similar she was to my late wife. I told her that I could see us building a life together, and that I was focused on our future, not my past. I told her that there is absolutely no competition, and that while I was hurt by the ultimatum, I was ready to move past this and move the chest to storage somewhere else. It wasn't enough for her. I don't know what else I needed to say or do to communicate my love and dedication, but she was dead set on me getting rid of the chest or her leaving. I told her a final time that there was not an ounce of chance I was getting rid of it. Radio silence. Then she gets a bag of her stuff, hops in the car and drives off, ignoring me when I asked what was going on. After calling her multiple times for a few hours, I learned that she's staying with a friend, who she called in the car, I guess, so she originally just drove off not knowing where she was going and making arrangements to move out next week. I'm still in shock, but I mostly feel confused and hollow. Maybe I truly wasn't ready for a relationship. Maybe she is just crazy, maybe a bit of both. That's the full update. It sort of went how a lot of comments predicted, but I feel like an absolute crap. Going to order takeout, play video games all weekend to try and reset. Cheers to being alone, I guess. Story 2. Would I be the a-hole if I called a little girl's mother to ask why son wasn't invited to her birthday? Original post. I, 28 female, have twin 5-year-old boys Jude and Jonah. They go to a private Jewish kindergarten where it's very customary to invite the whole class to birthday parties. It might even be a school rule, but I don't think I'm going to take this to the school. Jude and Jonah are very well-mannered and reserved. Obviously, I'm biased, but they've always gotten along with all of their peers and have never gotten into any drama. Jude is definitely a slow reader, and we've gotten him a tutor, but it's still been very hard for him. At our synagogue, the bathroom signs just say men and women with no little picture, and they are single bathrooms. 2 weekends ago, Jude walked into the women's by accident, and I guess the door wasn't locked correctly because he walked in on this woman named Jess, who is the mother of a little girl in his class. He says he just saw her on the toilet and ran out, closed the door, and said sorry. Jude immediately came up to me and told me, and he was very embarrassed. I told him it wasn't a big deal, and he just should remember to knock next time, and the longer word says women. He said he will, and that he thought it would be a stalled bathroom like most public bathrooms are, and that's fair, so I left it there. Jess came up to talk to me afterwards and told me like he needed to be punished. She said it was extremely inappropriate. I assured her he didn't know and wouldn't do it again, but she said there's no way he can't read men and women, and that her daughter can, and told me I had to nip this behavior in the bud. I often feel talked down to because of my age by other parents at the school, so I just said I would take care of it and left it there. On Friday, her daughter was handing out birthday invites and gave one to Jonah, but not Jude. They both asked her why, and she said her mom said not to give him one and wouldn't tell her why. Jude cried the whole rest of the day and wouldn't tell anyone why because he doesn't want to be a tattletale. I asked Jude if anything else had happened between the two of them, and he promised me it didn't and said that they've been playing together at recess this whole last week, and her daughter was trying to cheer him up by suggesting ways to sneak him in. I'm honestly livid. I wouldn't care if she had given neither of them an invite, but giving one twin and not the other is incredibly rude and passive-aggressive. I'm considering calling her and talking about it because I think it's ridiculous to hold this much of a grudge against a 5-year-old. Would that make me an a-hole? Should I just decline Jonah's invite? I think the birthday rule is silly and it's her choice who she invites, but this is just ridiculous. Edit. Synagogue and school are two separate places, but there's a lot of overlap with the people. Also, I'm not planning on sending either of them to the party at the moment, but I am considering calling her to confront her about it rather than just having this weird dynamic where I'm hearing things from Jude that come from her kid that comes from her. Now for the update. Hi everyone. Thank you everyone who responded to my last post. I tried my best to reply or at least upvote to every comment. I was happy to hear that I wasn't the whole, but as far as advice went, I got a lot of mixed feedback. Some telling me to call Jess out, some telling me there's nothing I can do. Some telling me to host a party on the same day and invite all the kids in their class. I decided to contact a rabbi whose wife is also the assistant principal of their school. They said they think talking with Jess and having a sit-down conversation is the best way to go. On Saturday, they asked Jess to stay after services to have a talk. It was the rabbi, his wife, me, my wife, Jess, and her ex. The rabbi's wife explained that school policy says that you can either invite less than half of the class or the entire class, and Jude was the only child not invited. Jess replied that Jude is horribly ill-mannered, and that's why she didn't want him at the party. We were curious to know if she had any other instances of his bad behaviors, and she started listing that he likes running around and jumping off of things, typical 5-year-old behavior. It was honestly comedic, since anyone who spent any time with the two of them knows Jonah is by far the crazy one. But anyway, she couldn't come up with any real examples of his bad behavior other than the bathroom incident, which she horribly exaggerated since the last time we talked about it. The rabbi's wife said that the only way this could be a valid reason for the school board was if she filed a complaint with the synagogue and the school, and then they would both investigate. So she caved and said that they could both come, and we said we would decide if we wanted to. Her ex came up to us as we were leaving, after not saying anything the whole meeting. He said not to come to the birthday party since Jess is going to be a momzilla and probably be an a-hole the whole time. We organized a play date for a few days after the party is planned at his house, and he ensured the boys would get goodie bags and cake. Clearly the most important things. Anyway, good news all around. The boys are pretty much over it, and they think we're being drama queens. Anyway, thanks, Reddit. Story 3. I cut ties with my paternal family. Since I was younger, I've always noticed a difference in my father's family's treatment of me. I was the unplanned daughter in the middle of a divorce, while my older brother was expected and looked forward to by the family from an early age. At first, I didn't notice this difference. I just thought it was in my head, or that I was exaggerating, so I never paid much attention. For example, at parties, my family only liked me to go when my brother went. On the commemorative dates, my brother got video games, remote control cars, or anything he asked for, while I received those little mirrors for $1.99 or a notebook for 5 materials with a random princess. I often cried and felt excluded. But the family said it was drama and there was no favoritism. The person who affected me the most was my paternal grandmother. Her life revolved around my brother. So let's get straight to the point that made me realize this. In January 2020, when I was 15 years old, my father came to spend the holidays in Sao Paulo, and he came up with a brilliant idea of spending time at my grandparents' farm. I was happy because he loved the farm. We went to my grandparents' house first so we could go to the farm early the next day. My brother didn't want to go because, according to him, there was going to be an event on Star Tower Defense on Roblox and he couldn't miss it. So it was just me. When I arrived at her house, instead of greeting me, the first thing that she said was, "Where's your brother? Didn't he come?" And I replied that he preferred to play, and she just shrugged and went to greet my father. During the day, she didn't stop commenting on how much she wanted her grandson to be here with her. But I ignored it because it could just be missed, right? We went early the next day. Before arriving at my grandparents' farm, we passed by the neighbor's farm, whom I had a lot of friendship and affection, as I spent a lot of time with her. But when I looked inside, I saw that she had brought her grandchildren, and they were almost everyone my age. I was excited, and when we arrived at the place and unloaded our suitcase, the first thing I did was greet her grandchildren, who were childhood friends from that place, especially a specific friend. We read and talked about anime and manga. I asked my father if I could play with them, and he agreed. I spent the whole day there playing and having fun. When I returned, my grandmother was quiet. So my aunt came over to talk, saying that my grandmother was sad that I stopped staying with her to spend the day with the neighbor and her grandchildren, since she was my grandmother, and I agreed with her and said that the next day I would spend the day with her and that she shouldn't worry. The next day, while my grandmother was making lunch, I was eating snacks with my cousins and talking to my aunt. My father and grandfather were away because my father had gotten sick and had food poisoning, so there were only the two of us left. While we were eating, my little cousin asked if he could go play with the neighbor's children, and my grandmother, who was cooking, butted in and said, "No, you can't." And my cousin asked why, receiving the answer, "Don't be disobedient like certain people and go to other people's houses." I looked at her and said, "Was that a hint?" And she replied, "Yes, it was. If your brother was here, it would be much better. He wouldn't be being as disobedient as you. He could have come instead of you." And I exploded. If he really cared, I wouldn't have preferred to play video games instead of coming to see you. And since I'm disobedient, I'm really going to be. I was going to spend the day with you, but since I'm not welcome, I'm leaving." I got up and ran to the neighbor. I met my friend and started crying. I stayed there until nightfall, and it was time to go home. I had called my mother and told her everything. She was furious and said that she was going to talk to my father, but she asked me to go back to my grandparents' place and just ignore my grandmother. Since everyone was gone except my grandmother, I did what she said and came back in silence and went to lie down on the bed. When I was lying down, my grandmother sat on the sofa that was in the next room. There were no doors, so I could hear everything that was happening and see it too. She had sat down in front of the TV, and without looking at me, just standing still, she started to say, "Your father called me and told me that you called your mother. You always do that. You're just like your mother. It's horrible. Your brother should have come instead of you. You're not even your father's daughter." And she continued talking all night. I couldn't hear anymore because of the crying, and I slept in tears. The next day, when my father was at home, she was acting as if nothing had happened and came to talk to me normally, but I hadn't forgotten, and since we returned to the house, I didn't say anything to her, and not for a while after. Until my birthday arrived in October, and she sent one to me from my brother, asking him to give it to me. When he said she gave me a gift, I gave it back to him and asked to give it back because I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. He was pissed off and didn't want to talk to me. And my family was upset too and didn't want to know what happened. I told them what had happened, but they said that my grandmother had already told me everything, saying that I was super rude and that I had responded to everyone that after scolding me, I didn't like it and ran to the neighbor after telling my grandfather to go to that place. I cut ties with them all. I told myself that I could no longer accept people who harmed me in my life. But my father thinks that I should apologize just to end this crappy atmosphere. Maybe I was the wrong one. That's all for today. If you're enjoying this story, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you.